Hi, I'm Angie Pontani, the burlesque superstar who has spent the last 20 years shimmying and shaking around the globe. I've performed in showrooms, ballrooms, small rooms, and big rooms, every room except a mushroom. Along the way, I've met some amazing people, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Together, we will pull back the curtain to reveal what really happens behind the glitter, feathers, and tassels. So join me for the bump and grind. Welcome to today's edition of the Bump and Grind. I was really pumped when we locked in today's guest. And that's because she comes at it from a very different perspective than most of the performers that I've interviewed so far. And I'm talking about the one and only Dr. Lucky. She is the premier PhD of burlesque. She's a performer, she's a producer, and she's an educator. And most importantly, she is a smarty pants. And I was a little bit nervous because I don't speak college very good, right? I can speak showbiz all dang day, but college is not my specialty. I did not come from a family that read big books and then sat down and talked about them. I didn't come from a family that went to college, really. Like my mom's sister was the first person that went, and the smarty pants in my immediate family was my older sister Tara. It was definitely not me. The only teachers that ever liked me were my theater teacher and my art teacher. So anyway, I get a little apprehensive when I talk to super smarty pants because I get nervous, and when I talk to Dr. Lucky, I gotta go and look up a lot of the words she said later, and that's cool. There's no shame in that game, you know. But I was nervous and excited to talk to her because I have a lot of questions when it comes to burlesque on stage, transitioning to burlesque in the classroom. I have a lot of questions about how something that was such a lowbrow art form has become something that's so thoroughly studied and dissected and written about, you know. And something that I love about Dr. Lucky is that, you know, she views everything with this critical mind, like looking beyond 3 minutes of a performance, and then she comes up with this unspoken message. You know, she's chronicling the revolution of burlesque. She's taking these performances and pulling out the deeper meaning and really sharing that with the world. And Dr. Lucky has chronicled the neo-burlesque movement. She's got a book coming out on that. And she's also recorded stories from our legends, like the one and only Dixie Evans, you know, the woman who created the Miss Exotic World pageant. So beyond the stage, Lucky's living this. You know, she's living burlesque, she's recording it, she's sharing it, and she's preserving it, and she's bringing it from the stage to the classroom. She's putting it on paper and books that are going to live forever. So the tale lives on, the legacy lives on, the evolution of the art form is living on through people like Dr. Lucky. And I there aren't many, I'll tell you that right now. So I'm very excited. She had her start here in New York City. She was around in the neo-burlesque movement, performing and producing. And then she hit the road where she is now kicking it up in New Mexico. And I even got to see the Rio Grande, which runs through her backyard. So this was a really exciting conversation. I got to ask a lot of questions and she answered them. So it was really thrilling, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And I think that maybe if I went to college and studied burlesque, I would have probably gotten an A or at least a B or C plus. I don't know. Ship sailed. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And please enjoy my chat with the one and only Dr. Lucky. So, Dr. Lucky, I have known you for a long time. I believe that we met in 1999. Is that about correct, right?
That sounds about correct. Might have been a few years earlier, but around that time.
Oh my gosh, it might have been earlier, right? Because I was trying to think of when we first actually work together. But we met because you were very good friends with my dancing sister, Helen Pontani, Helen Burkett. And we met just mutually through Helen as Helen and I started to work together and dance together. She was like, you have to meet my bestie, Dr. Lucky. And so we met. And at the time, I was trying to remember, but weren't you working at a theater in downtown? Was it a small theater?
I did. I worked at a off Broadway theater, creating original, shows, producing shows, directing shows. And we, a couple of times, put these like really random, like dance spoofs in the middle of these plays. And so it kind of, looking back, it sort of was burlesque, but I don't think anybody would have called it burlesque at the time.
No, not at that point in time. And that's like, I remember actually after we knew it was burlesque, right? Didn't you bring us in to do a show there and we like performed in a window or something? I just remember there was a space that right? And there was like this tiny window that we performed on that was like a bit of a stage.
That is probably that space, but I don't remember you guys being there, which doesn't mean that you weren't fabulous.
Oh, listen, if you remembered every place that we've been together or apart, that would be a very stellar memory. And I only remember it because I remember the space that we were performing on was like really tiny, tiny little place. And we were doing the Italian princess routine in our chairs. And we were like, wow, I think we're going to fall out the window. But we didn't, because then you would remember.
That's like the year that me and Twirla did a New Year's Eve show on a pool table.
Oh, Twirla, the baton twirling sensation. I miss her. Those were fun days, man.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember we met at that time and we started hanging out and having a good time together. And then the first time I remember working together was when the Pontani sisters put on a show in Coney Island. And I think that was probably 2000. And you came in and you did the belly dance and you had a beard. Do you remember that?
I do. Yes. Dance of the Seven Veils with the big reveal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. And you were the bearded lady at the end of that. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just so funny because at the time you were in theater, of course, but you weren't really on the burlesque trajectory, like the roller coaster of it yet that's led you where you were today. So I was wondering, was that your first burlesque show?
I feel like my first burlesque experience was with the Pontani sisters as a cigarette girl. Like you guys asked me to be
oh my God, yes,
a cigarette girl with the flying neutrinos.
Yes.
And I have this very like vivid memory of studying for my area exams. And I was a TA for this professor in the drama department. And I remember bringing my makeup with me and like, getting into drag after I finished my work for him. And then just trying to like scrape all the glitter off of his desk into the garbage can.
Yes.
And so that was a little bit before that. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to answer because I sort of feel like I was doing burlesque before that because Helen and I would get dressed up and dance for each other and get drunk and dance in my living room, which is basically what burlesque is.
Essentially. Actually, right now, more than ever, I'm pretty much doing that full time. I remember the Cigarette Girl show, and it was a Coney Island High or Swing 46. I'm one or the other. But so you've come and you were doing it. It is obviously part of your spirit, like the whole burlesque. Let's get in the bar and let's put on a show. Fearlessly crossing these worlds of downtown nightlife and college, but then you just went full fledged, and we'll kind of get through it all. But what always fascinates me about you is how you don't just perform on stage, you don't just put together shows, you study and you teach, and now like literally 20 years later, you're a legitimate doctor of burlesque. How did you, was it organic? You saw it, you realized this movement is happening in New York. It's the late 90s, early 2000s. was it conscious that this was the path that you wanted to take, or was it more of an organic journey for you to get from, cigarette girl working in the theater, interjecting these comedic dance routines, to literally being a doctor and teaching at NYU and other places? I mean, it's a huge jump.
It's been very organic because no one would ever consciously do any of this. So when I sort of jokingly talked about, getting into drag while I was studying for my area exams, but I actually studied burlesque in graduate school. My area of expertise is primarily lowbrow American popular culture and entertainment. So my master's thesis is on circus sideshow freaks, and my dissertation's on Coney Island at the turn of the 20th century. And so one of my areas was like popular entertainment, kind of between the wars. So it's like 1865 to 1914. And so burlesque was one of the things that I studied, among other things. Like vaudeville, blackface minstrel shows, World's Fairs, all of these things, amusement parks, all of these things are part of the same umbrella of, and what's interesting to me is to look back in time and to see how people sought to be entertained, because that to me kind of tells you what the essence or the core of a culture is by looking at how they choose to spend their leisure time. And again, leisure time was a modern concept in the 1870s and 80s. It was like something that was new and emerging. So I definitely was studying it. I hadn't yet made the leap between, Lydia Thompson and the British Blondes notion of burlesque as a subset of literary parody that inverts form and content, and contemporary burlesque. Because people always say, well,
Right.
What do they have in common? And
I think they have a lot in common.
I do too, but Lydia, they also didn't strict. So when did the strict T's come in and become synonymous? But definitely that like making high culture low and making low culture, like elevating it and poking fun at it. Like poking fun basically to me is the essence of burlesque. And that fun, that poking fun has two meanings. It's like, it's a making fun, like making fun of something, but it also makes things fun and entertaining, right? So it's a poking fun, and it's also like something that makes it light and fun and easy to consume. So I was, just plugging along. I had finished my dissertation and came across this book by Joanna Frua called Monster/Beauty. And she talks about the aging bodybuilder as this figure that simultaneously attracts and repulses, right? And it's that push-pull that I thought was really interesting. And I started thinking, I was like, well, that's what burlesque is, because it's not just like super hot, sexy girls. It's sort of like, Bunny Love doing some like fucked up act that kind of, it's like she's hot, but also you're like, what is she doing? And it's that repulsion that was part of it. So I started doing this research and polling all the like monsters of burlesque, way back then, the Black Cat, those kids from
Massachusetts or something that they did a horror kind of vibe of burlesque. I absolutely remember them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just started like polling people on, I want to say it was Facebook, but it might've been MySpace back then.
It was MySpace.
Yeah. And I started getting people like putting these calls out and getting these people to respond to this idea of monster beauty and burlesque. It's like the monsters of burlesque, but then also thinking about how extreme beauty is a form of monstrosity. So you don't look at someone like Dita Von Teese and go, oh my God, what an ugly monster she is. But even the way that she sort of fabricates this version of herself, it like belies the natural.
But wouldn't that tie back to the parody of it, the parody essence? Because that's actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about, is because, okay, so you look, all right, Lydia Thompson comes over in the 1860s, right? And she brings this burlesque show that is basically a parody play, but it is showing off feminine figures. But yeah, there is no stripping, but they're talking and they're doing these prose, and it's political and powerful in that sight. And then somehow we jump to the 1930s and the 40s where there's actual strip cheese happening. But do you feel that there is even a parody within that? Like, because you look at the golden era, right, of the burlesque genre, which would be the 30s and the 40s. And it is these women that were considered very beautiful in their time period. Do you think that that has that element of monstrosity, that push and pull? Would that belie the Dita thing? It's almost a pageantry parody.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that when I think about what you're talking about, one thing that I always come back to is that a lot of that golden era of burlesque, what they were emulating was elite society. So again, it's a parody, right? Like they are wearing gowns, they're wearing gloves, they're wearing fur coats, they're wearing rhinestones because maybe they could afford a diamond or two. Um, and you also have to think about the material reality of most of the women that were performing during that time period. They came from working class backgrounds, they came from poor backgrounds, they were trying to escape. And this is not to say everybody, but a lot of them were escaping abuse and,
For sure.
and didn't have like lots of options. They weren't college bound and had like these career trajectories. They're very working class and working poor. So the fact that they were emulating this upper society lady is sort of it fits in with that. It fits in with that parody that sort of like carries throughout the history of burlesque, modern burlesque in an American context.
No, for sure. I see. I talk to a lot of the legends, or you read their stories, and they're always like, well, when I was 14, I went out to make it on my own. Because this is also, for most of these ladies, you're in the Great Depression, right? Or you're about to go into it. And going through it. So where can you pinpoint, or do you have an idea or a theory? Because I tried to piece it together about where it did go from just speaking in prose and doing these poems and Shakespearean plays with parody and comedy, where the striptease came into play. Can you pinpoint or guess, or is there a specific thing that made that? I've heard stories.
Well, I can tell I have a pinpoint moment that's before striptease because I think I'll speak about that in a second. But to me, what made the invention of American burlesque wasn't just Lydia Thompson and the British Blondes coming over in 1868. It was the melding or the combination of two art forms. One is that parodic approach to plays, right, where they just like poke fun at everything. And then the second major category was what's known as leg shows. So, today we think of ballet as high art, but back then ballet was an art form that showed women's ankles, and that was really sort of shocking. And so things like spectacular stage productions, and again, we're talking about a traditional theater, would do these like big melodramas, or would do these like equestrian dramas, or that would do these things that would have fairy sprites on stage, and that would allow the women to wear, slightly shortened tutus. And they referred to these as leg shows. There was obvious, and if you look at something like, The Black Crook, or you look at one of these productions that sort of looked at as a precursor to what would become known as burlesque. That's what they had in common. They oftentimes didn't have a storyline. Like the most famous story is they put two shows together because a theater burned down, and they wanted to. They already had all the performers there, so they slapped the story together with these ballet dancers, and that was sort of very exciting and titillating for an audience back then. So combining those leg shows with that theatrical form, that was how burlesque was born. So that burlesque was started to be known as something that you could go and see the parodic play, but you would also get to check out the ladies. So Lydia Thompson and the British Blondes, as we all know, dressed up in men's clothes, so they would wear pantaloons and things like that. And so that so when those two things formed, the other thing that happened was that burlesque started to take on the structure of the olio, which is a third part of a minstrel show. And we tend to not like to talk about blackface minstrelsy because it's a really like ugly misrepresentation of Black culture on American stages that was based on ridicule. But we also have to recognize that a lot of the popular forms that we know of today, vaudeville was also was based on this too, are variety shows, right? That really tap into that. So I think that we don't need to like ignore the past. We don't need to ignore just the ugly sides to give credit where credit is due. Like, I don't think Saturday Night Live would exist without burlesque, and I don't think burlesque would exist without minstrel shows.
For sure, because it set the format for these variety shows, skit shows. It doesn't have to be an A to Z play with a through line throughout the whole thing. You can just present this mishmash of entertainment.
Exactly.
And that's great for short attention spans.
Which they had back then too.
Yeah.
So that brings us to striptease, and striptease kind of fits within that context, because if you look at a traditional vaudeville show, if you look at a traditional variety show, they would have opera singers, they would have dog acts, they would have all these variety of performers. And so all of the myths about the invention of the striptease all oscillate around a mistake or an error, right? So one performer tried to save a few pennies on her dry cleaning bill, and she took her cuffs off, and the crowd went wild, right? And they're all this assumption that no self-respecting woman would like go on stage and take her clothes off. Or Hinda Wasu, who was trying to, her costume got stuck, and they were like, "Get out there, kid!" And thank God her solo act was a shimmy. So I think that once the Minskys came along and were starting to borrow from all of these traditions, and they are the ones that say that they invented the striptease. There were performers that stripped on stage before and that teased on stage, but chocolate and peanut butter, right? Put those two together, and suddenly you have a peanut butter cup. And I think a lot of this is related to, of course, the Depression, having cheap variety entertainment. And again, this was not, you wouldn't go to a burlesque show and see burlesque dancers from beginning to end. It was just one aspect of it. And so I think it has a lot to do with the loosening of social norms. So when you look at how women started to behave in the 1920s, the flapper movement, the jazz age, black and tan clubs, being able to be out in public more, smoking, bobbing your hair, all of these things are part of this larger liberation of the female body from the corset and Victorian era sensibilities. So I think that had a lot to do with it too. It was the time period. And also, I really think that the Minskys had a lot to do with that transformation, because they also started to give top billing to women over the male comics, which is something that Ziegfeld was definitely, the Follies were not doing. So all of these things were combining to make this thing start to emerge and become part of the lexicon.
Do you think that the Great Depression propelled burlesque in a sense? Do you think that came into play? Like, we're into this period of time where everybody's like, oh my God, okay, I have nothing, I don't care anymore. Like, gotta go out, gotta have a good time. This is the ticket that you can afford. Certainly I think propelled stars because these women were getting jobs in these places. So do you think that, because when I read about it, sometimes I'm like, wow, I think that the Great Depression actually assisted burlesque to get a foothold, because it was the poor man's Follies. It did provide a great escape, and it was an affordability. It was, for everybody.
Absolutely. And it was time. So I think what you're describing, it's not a feeling, it's kind of a fact, right?
Yeah.
That workers could go in, somebody out of work could go in and pay a quarter. And you have to keep in mind that back then they had the continuous shows. So, you could stay there all day if you wanted to, and be entertained. And Dixie talks a lot about this, right? Like, she talks about, back in the day, this was real American. This is good entertainment. And, it allowed people to get to escape from their lives. And I think that part of actually the draw, believe it or not, there's this joke in a book about the Minsky brothers, that a new skit about burlesque had not been written in 50 years or 20 years or whatever. And it was true. And I think that part of that, meet me around the corner in a half an hour. Right? So I think that was actually part of the appeal, because there was a nostalgia and a comfortability around these archetypes and these stock tropes. And you kind of knew what you were going to get. But if you saw something you'd never seen before, it's like, ooh, that's kind of exciting. And so I think
totally.
Yeah.
And do you think, like, okay, so we look at the trajectory of it and where we are now, and now, like, in neo burlesque, it's very politicized. We're really aware of the feminist aspects within it. It has a lot of revolution inspiration within it as well. It's inherently political, right? And I believe when you look back on it in retrospect and study as you do, these women were very political, being on stage, showing their bodies, flaunting their bodies, being in top billing, some of them making crap loads of money. Was it viewed to have a political nature at that time, or was it just kind of ensconced in entertainment?
I haven't done a lot of archival research on the golden era of burlesque. All of the stuff that I know about that era is from having read books or talking to performers. So I have a lot more knowledge about earlier time periods and later time periods. All of that said, I do have an opinion about it.
Shocking.
But I think that, from having talked to a lot of the legends, they make it very clear that their careers were not necessarily something that were looked upon as, I'm trying to think of a polite term to use.
You don't have to be polite.
Okay, I won't be polite. It was sex work. They were strippers.
Mm-hmm.
This was not considered the most reputable career path. I'll put it that way. So when you talk about someone being political, or when you talk about an act being political, I think to some degree there has to be, there has to be some type of intention behind that, or fighting against a system. And I think what a lot of women were doing back then was complete and total survival. And that's not to devalue what they're doing, because it was absolutely punk rock before punk rock, and badass, right. That women would, and this goes back to the 20s and 30s, that women would, if they had a family, leave their family and tour and, and get on a train and go from theater to theater. And I think all of that is super, super radical. But I think that we can't romanticize
For sure.
the material reality that, like, a lot of these people were struggling and they were surviving. And this was the choice, not a choice, but the choice.
There was no luxury of choice. It was a survival situation.
Right. So when I think about a lot of the performers today, it's like they're college educated, they come from certain backgrounds, and they may also have a day job, advanced degrees.
That's actually what my next question for you is I find it really fascinating that so many people who work in burlesque now are highly educated, went to art schools. I find that to be really fascinating, especially when you contrast it to its heyday, where there were women going into it, leaving the farm at 13 years old and pulling the curtain open at Minsky's. It's definitely interesting. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that, as to what appeals to it. What is the appeal to this kind of, this women of today, this college educated, smart, let me dissect this and get inside the body of burlesque and deliver this message in my way? And what is the continuum? Like, what ties it together is what blows my little not college educated mind.
Yes. Well, I was going to actually turn that question back on you and ask you, attracted you to it. But also, you're a college dropout, so
Yes, I went to college for about 15 minutes. I went to NYU, and I'm not good at school learning. It's not my thing. I love showbiz, and that is really what drew me to it initially and what kept me in love with it for several years. And I think it's really only the past 10 years of my career, I'm a 15, my career has been long, that I've really started to look into it and research more of it. I mean, I just do it for the applause. But when you see the greater meaning of it, especially in this world that we live in that's increasingly political, and you have this beautiful platform to share a message through entertainment, I feel like that's the best way. Like, if you can put on a performance that brings people joy and they don't even realize that they're trying a different drink for the first time, they're experiencing something that may be outside of their comfort zone. I feel like that's just a great way to change the world, one audience member at a time. But I just like to tap my feet and dance around and hear people clap for me.
I do think that one thing that one reason people are attracted to burlesque as a genre is the format. So it provides these very like short format type approaches to presenting an idea or an image that's very approachable. So you mentioned people who are in art school, or if you were a theater major, or you're a dance major, and you want to create a piece, and it takes 9 months to get a little short theater piece together, right? And so I think that that's part of one of the things that attracts people. It's like, it's this short format, right? So yeah, you don't have to be in rehearsal for 6 months and do auditions and, all of that kind of stuff. And also that short format also allows there to be pretty much anything can go. Like, there tends to be a general beginning, middle, and end to most acts, but how that transpires can happen in an infinite amount of ways. And so I think people who are, smart and creative, and like that applause, that they can turn to this form. And it really allows, even though you kind of know what's going to happen, someone's going to go on stage and they're either going to take their clothes off or put their clothes on. And then they're going to, at the end, you're going to applaud, right? So we know what's going to happen. But it's the unexpected. And so I think smart people who have something to say do the unexpected in ways that is interesting and innovative.
Yeah. And so that would be where, like, when you use terms like revolution and the pageantry and the parody of the pageantry, oh, so many P's, really would come into play. Like, the options are never ending. What are some of your favorite like uses of the stage as a tool? Like, which performers, are there acts that you can like just pop off your dome that you see that really beautifully spread that mantra?
Yes. Well, as it happens, I have finished writing a book exactly on neo-burlesque. I know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure you're aware, but I've been writing an academic monograph on neo-burlesque as a new sexual revolution. And basically what it is focused case studies of performers and performances that really are documenting the early neo-burlesque emergence in New York City, and looking at, what type of, how these acts had political reverberations both on stage and off. And so one of the acts I talk about in that book, each chapter focuses on a performer and some of their performances. And so I'll just mention one, which is Julie Atlas Muse does an act. She calls it her escape routine or her rope act. And basically, she just comes on stage with nothing on but a rope. And she's wrapped in this rope. And the Leslie Gore's "You Don't Own Me" is the song playing. And it's a very simple piece that started from having interviewed Julie. It started out as improvisation. So she came up with an idea one day, like she was listening to a song. She went out and bought a rope. And that night she was performing it at Blue Angel. And so that time period from idea to delivery, like there's not even an incubation period. And I have had that experience too, where I'm like, come up with an idea and listen to a song a couple times, and then that night you go and perform it, and it's really, really exciting, right? And it doesn't always work. But that piece is just about, it's very literally about, breaking the bonds of patriarchy, and just being like breaking whatever bonds that are holding you back. When Julie talks about it, she talks about that. And it's just this really simple piece that there's a moment in it. The video recording that's available on YouTube, there's a moment where there's a break in the music, and the rope just like magically, it's almost like she has some type of lever pull on it. Like, it's fucking beautiful and incredible. It's just like, you don't own me. And the rope, it just like uncurls from her body. And she's just, standing there naked. And it's really beautiful. And Julie did that piece after she had won Miss Exotic World, or I think it was still Miss Exotic World. And so she was doing her step down, and she did that act. And, people loved it or they hated it because it technically doesn't fit within that very static definition of burlesque, as you have to be wearing a gown or, fringe or sequins and corset and have gloves. It wasn't that. And so people kind of responded. But that to me is, using your physical body and using your sexual power to make a commentary and to entertain and to get people to think. Like, if that's not burlesque, then I don't really know what is. Of course, everyone's entitled to their opinions and what they like. But I think that burlesque is much more than gowns and corsets.
So when you look at neo-burlesque and you've studied it and you see these elements that create the revolution of this movement, and you look at it now, right? The neo-burlesque movement started in the mid to late 90s. I felt like, it was really peak rocking in the 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10 New York City. There was so much going on. And now we are here, not necessarily in quarantine, even though we are, but speaking of the broader sense of the state of burlesque, what do you think about the changes and the ebbs and the flows in the styles of the scene and what's popular and, what's wanted on stage? How do you feel about that? Like, what's your read on that? Speak freely.
No, it's such a broad question, because you're talking about, there's regional markets, there's different types of performance venues, there's different national standards, so I actually can't answer that in a way that would be satisfying to everybody or anybody. But I don't review 500 applications like you do every year and see all the performers that are coming out. But I think what has happened is, and this is from having taught burlesque at universities and burlesque schools and stuff like that, is that usually the first act that someone does is their complete and total id. It is like the thing that they dream about. It's probably weird and nonsensical. So, when I have, when I teach students to come up with these new ideas, to come up with these new acts, their first act ever, and they're coming up with their name and all of this stuff, they're probably not going to do a gown number. They usually don't. They usually do something kind of weird, avant-garde, unexpected. And then usually the second act they do, they say, oh, I need to come up with a classic act so I can get booked.
I feel like, and again, this is my opinion, but when we started and everybody started, it was a little bit more like everybody had their own vibe. And now that we, have technology that unites us all and people can see the different styles of performance, perhaps the influence of this this one style, which, I don't want to say it's easier to do, because I think a good classic number is not easy to do at all, but it's certainly more accessible because the benchmarks are all there for you. The landmines that you've got to hit. you know the basics that you could have. And that's not going to necessarily make it good, but maybe it makes it a little bit more risky than trying to tap into your inner Julie and come up with something amazing like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think added on to that is this increased dependence on festivals and competitions. And, you know, it started with the big one, but I think that now this attempt to collect these trophies, to me, it feels it's not even a step away from toddlers and tiaras. It is toddlers and tiaras. You know,
well, that was one of my questions for you too, because when you look at the big one, right, Miss Exotic World, which is now the Burlesque Hall of Fame, at its inception, it was a perfect parody of pageantry. Even if it wasn't announced that way, you know, you're in the desert. Dixie Evans, the most amazing, burlesque ambassador, was there leading the way, you know, lighting up the press and just turning literally this little goat ranch in the desert to this beautiful place that you would want to be. And these women would come in with their bikinis and compete for this title. And that has certainly changed a lot. And I do think the evolution is challenging, because now it's on a beautiful Vegas stage. But as you, cover those 20 something years, it kind of at times can lose the parody and become legitimate pageantry.
Yes. And I think that legitimate pageantry where the parodic element has sort of fallen off. I think that what is falling off is the poking fun and the do it yourself and the having fun and the, making it fun and making fun of it. I mean, Dixie was very clear. Like, she created Exotic World competition to bring attention to her museum. And she went down to the strip club and grabbed a couple, strippers that she hoped would look okay in a gown and could prance back and forth. And that was the origins of Exotic World, right? And so it's so interesting. Just last weekend, I was with Kitten DeVille at her house, and we were watching old VHS tapes of the ranch.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, man, we need to show the people this today, because I think that whole thing is completely missing. And I think that performers today, to get anywhere in your career, it's like you have to be a title winner. You have to you have to go to these festivals and try and get a title.
And what do you get when you win after you've won all the titles and gone to all the festivals? There doesn't seem to be an obvious career trajectory in this route.
No, it's horizontal, right? And it's fun. And this is one of the things I argue in my book, is that burlesque is an amateur art form. And that doesn't mean that there aren't professionals like yourself.
Thank you.
And the people I talk about in my book. It doesn't mean that you can't be a professional performer. It means at its essence, pretty much anybody who wants to do it can. I mean, you could take a class, or you can get yourself booked in a show. And even though, some people look at that as the problem with burlesque, I look at that as that's its very essence. It is
I'm totally with you on that. It's the accessibility.
It's a talent show. It's karaoke. And that and that's why people fucking love it. Not only do they love to do it, but they love to watch it, because you want to root for that underdog. And man, when that newbie, when her fucking zipper gets stuck and she's freaking out on stage and everybody's screaming for her, I've seen literally the act that just was a complete and total fucking train wreck get more response than anything else on stage, because it's you're rooting. It's that in that moment liveness of live performance. And this is why I'm okay with us not doing performance until we can be back into those live performance spaces, because that's what makes burlesque unique. It is live in the moment. And it's also, yeah. I also don't think it can be commodified. I don't think burlesque can be on television. I don't think it can be necessarily in movies. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think it needs to be experienced live in settings that are geared towards adults, right? So I'm not sure if the internet thing, if the live and the internet shows, I'm not sure if they're going to last. post-COVID, they might. But I also think it's going to turn it into something else. And that's okay too.
I feel like at historical moments in time, burlesque pivots a bunch, and it reflects what's happening in society. And I feel like we are certainly in a historical period of time right now. There's a lot of civil unrest. There's a lot of political strife. We have a freaking pandemic, for God's sakes. No one can go outside. We can't sit next to each other in a bar. And I agree with you that so much of the energy of a burlesque show, it's like when I have a good show, I feel like I just rode the cyclone with 300 people. Like it's like you just all take this ride together, and yeah, you cannot get that on Instagram or anywhere else. But what do you think? What are some of the turns? And I know it's a ridiculous question because who knows, but what are some of the turns that you could see burlesque taking, since you're so acquainted with its history? Like, how do you think this could possibly change this form?
I mean, if I knew the answer to that, I would probably be doing it right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. The only thing that I can think of that it might pivot towards is smaller shows that are more about intimate theater experiences, longer sets, fewer performers, and repeating a couple of sets a night. Like that's the only model I can sort of see that might work in the near future. Because you can't pack a house. You're not going to be able to pack a house until there's a vaccine, right?
Yeah.
And so these like larger stadium, anything like that, I think it's going to be a shift back to more intimate. So I really don't know. What do you think? What do you think? How are you going to pivot?
Well, I am pivoting, whereas, I am doing some online stuff right now. And I'll say the most exciting thing about the online shows is seeing the people who are watching them talk and interact. Like that reflection of just everybody being together in a moment is more exciting to me, not more exciting than the performances, but that's really what, like, you see other people that writing and doing their little clap emoji, and you get so excited and you feel like you're together in a club. And that I feel like is a big part of the spirit of burlesque and the accessibility. And that when everybody is seeing these shows, they really let their guard down, and it's just really a full immersion experience. So, but I do agree that the smaller shows and the quicker turnover, so that the venues and the performers can make money. But what I find, and I don't want to say exciting about it, because there's nothing exciting. Trust me, I wish I was in Las Vegas right now performing instead of in my basement, hoping that my daughter's peacefully watching a movie. But I think it's exciting because I think we're going to see a renewed energy and interest for live performance. And I think that perhaps it will harken back to that raw energy of the late 90s and the early 2000s, where people were seeing something that at that point they had never seen before. But at this point, they haven't seen it in a long ass time. And they're really appreciating the fact that they can be out. And I think the performers are going to have a renewed energy. And I think, too, to harken back to what we were talking about the festivals and the pageant cycle and winning these titles, any of these big events, they're not really going to happen. So all that's gone. So we kind of have to revert back to the olden times model, which I think is a nice reset, and I'm looking forward to that. So in addition to all your studies and your teaching and your book writing, when is your book coming out, by the way?
Well, I'm not going to answer that question.
Keep them on their toes. Everybody stay on your toes.
My book is hopefully coming out soon. I do have a final that still has to be proofread and indexed, so I don't have a final date, but it's going to be coming out hopefully, in the next couple of months. But I wrote this book to prepare the world for my Dixie book.
Yes.
And so
Dixie Evans,
the Marilyn Monroe Burlesque. So
Dixie.
That book is I'm actually got back into that, and so I'm working on that too.
So you forged a really special relationship with Dixie Evans, who really, I feel like, is the reason that all of us are here today doing this. And you visited with her and you chronicled her life, and you've got all these amazing stories. Like, how happy are you to have had that experience?
It's pretty amazing. And as you probably know, I started the oral history the Living Legends Oral History Project at the Burlesque Hall of Fame. I started that, and I also started the Legends Sunday panel.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So when I started that, I would put a legend with a performer, with a contemporary performer. And so I had put together Dixie with the world famous Bob. And Bob also has a very special relationship with Dixie. And she knew exactly how to cue her for all of the great stories, right?
Of course.
And so I was sitting there in this 21-minute interview, and it's like, I cried, I laughed, my jaw dropped open, and like Bob and I were just like staring at each other with our eyebrows, like clown eyebrows up into our foreheads, like, what the fuck? And after that, I was like, okay, this has to be done. And within that year, I was on Dixie's door, knocking on the door. And I spent a week with her at a time over the course of 2008 until she died. And I, would sit and record her stories. I have them hundreds and hundreds of hours, all of them on audio. I have some on video. And
how amazing.
I know, it's quite a collection. And once I finish and publish my book, I'm going to make all of that available for free online to anybody who wants it. I want it to be open source, available to anybody, and to spread her word, to as many people who want to hear her stories, because she had a really amazing life. And she was an incredible storyteller. And I think that that's what made her a great performer, is that she told stories on stage.
You could really feel her enthusiasm whenever she would talk to you about anything or tell you a story about something. It was like her enthusiasm was just infectious, and she was hilarious too.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait to read that book, and then I can't wait to hear all those stories. I know there's going to be some juicy tidbits in there.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. But so we talked a lot about like education and big brained things and Neo and this and that, but about your stage life. So, you were a part of the whole crew in New York City from the Neo blast up until you packed up your little camper cherry and set across the country to start a new life in New Mexico on the Rio Grande. So what do you like? Do you prefer to perform? Do you prefer to write? Do you prefer to teach? Do you prefer to just be in your garden? What's your thing? What's your jam? You do it all.
If I could literally do anything all day, every day, or just do a thing every day, it would be hosting shows to like a medium to large size audience. I love that so much. And so that's one of the things that I've been doing a lot more out here in New Mexico, is hosting shows and creating shows. And I was able to get a resident show at a very nice hotel in Albuquerque that sought me out. And so that was been really exciting, because that kind of stuff doesn't really happen in New York. Like, everyone's just scrambling for whatever gig they could possibly get. And being a host is hard because, there's only one host in the evening. You might be able to add another performer, but you can't add another host. And we have so many super talented hosts in New York. Like, it's just hard to even hold the light. But so that's one thing that I have been working on and that I really love out here. And so I really work hard on my craft. I write, especially like if I have a show that I'm hosting, which is a lot more work than just showing up and doing an act, to be quite honest. I prepare for a week ahead, and I write every day and come up with jokes and rehearse material. And, it looks like it's improvisation on stage, but it's actually, and some of it is improvisation and some of it is previous material and some of it is new bits. And I really like that process. I like because it includes writing, it includes like reflecting and thinking about what works.
Hosting is hard, man. I've done it a couple of times and you're so right. It's like every time I've done it, I've literally prepared for weeks. I have notes and cue cards and everything's numbered. And when I get on, I am sweating. I'm so nervous because everything holds in your hands. The balance is in your hands, man. And you don't know what you're going to get with the audience. It's really stressful.
Yeah, a bad host can fuck up a good show. A bad performer can't fuck up a whole show, but a bad host can. And so
oh, God.
I actually like that. It really taps into, I see a lot of parallels between hosting shows and teaching. And like, something's not working. Okay, let's like pivot and switch gears and try something else. Okay, bring on the next act, or like, try and switch things up. And you constantly have to be on your feet. And, because I also produce the shows, I'm sort of responsible for the experience people are having. And, it's a really nice hotel, and, I'm able to curate and do this wonderful product. So I really love that. But also the amount of work that goes into one show, like you couldn't, unless you were repeating the same thing over and over again, it would be very, very difficult to do that every night of the week, unless somebody else was doing the producing side and all of that. It's just, it's hard, but they all blend into
maybe
each other.
Short format. Maybe the short format's going to come and then you just do the small show and you keep repeating and repeating. Yeah. But you are like teaching when you host your teaching, because when you do the festival, Dr. Lucky does our Sunday show at the Tippler, and you impart history as you take it through the show. And also I feel like you're one of these hosts, which is my favorite kind of host, that really gets the audience on board and is really positive and makes the audience feel comfortable and is like a team leader, spirit builder. And you really get them to take this journey with you as they watch the show, and you're teaching them.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not a drag queen host. Like the drag queens tend to be like really scathing. Not all of them, but that approach to hosting where you're kind of like making fun of the performers or making fun of the audience. It's like people are already insecure and have shitty lives, and they want to go out and have fun, and they don't want you to like subtly poke fun at them.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like they want you to like take them on a journey. And New Mexico, man, there are people that have never been to shows before. They've never been to a burlesque show. They have no idea what to expect. And by the end, they're just like beaming and, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's really sweet to see that again, right? Because everybody in New York is like all jaded. They're like, oh, it's like, oh, you're a burlesque performer. It's like, it's like in the 90s. Oh, you're in a band, It's like,
oh, totally.
It's really cute when it's like, when it's new again.
It's refreshing and new there. No, it's reinvigorates you. Like that's what, when we go on the road, we play these like smaller towns and the crowds are just amazing because they don't get beat over the head with it all the time. And it really refreshes your spirit. And it's the same thing in Vegas, which it's not a small town, but you have so many people from all over the world. So when they come see that show, they have that energy. They want to have fun with you. I like positivity. I will never like go to a nightclub where they're like, you have to stand in line and see if you are going to be allowed to get into this club or not. I'm like, I don't come here to be judged. I came here to have drinks, laugh, have a good time. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, definitely.
That's burlesque, right? That's burlesque.
Yeah.
That's the whole vibe of it.
For sure.
So when you're in the classroom, this is like one thing that I was thinking about too, when I was thinking about all the things that I want to teach you, talk to you about, the things that I want to talk to you about.
Teach me, girl.
Girl, I can't teach you. Sometimes I got a PhD just reading your book. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to highlight all the words I have to look up now. But when you're teaching, the kids that you're teaching, they're like in their 20s, right? They're early 20s for the most part.
It depends. At NYU, they're teenagers, they're like, some of them are 18, 19.
What is their response to this as an art form? Like, how are their views different when they see it? Do they take it in a certain way? Do they react to it in a different way?
Well, it's interesting because that has changed. I started teaching that class at NYU, I want to say 2004, maybe.
Wow.
Maybe 3. Anyway, it's been a long time. I think this is year 17 this summer. 16 or 17. But anyway, so people's relationship to burlesque has radically changed. When I first started teaching this class, people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what that is. And so now they've had some exposure to it, I don't know, through the movie Burlesque, which is not really burlesque.
What? No, I knew that movie was baloney when they had that 20-piece band. I was like, your club is going bankrupt. Get rid of the band, guys. This movie is not realistic.
No, it's just, it's a cute little coming of age story that's mistitled. It should be called like Nightclub or something. But anyway.
Yes.
But so today they've had some exposure to it, and it's, some of them are super excited about it. Some of them are overexposed and kind of have that like, oh, this is, we'll see what you can teach me about this. But the thing that's most exciting is exposing them to an art form that, number one, that they could possibly, whether they're going to have like a lasting career at it, they can make some money at it. Which when you look at how drama and theater departments train their students and train their actors, it's all about like the legitimate theater, and it's all about the play text, and it's all about, getting this role and the role of your life. And it's like, well, what if you what if you don't fit any of those roles? What if you never get that role? What about teaching them to come up with their own role of their life, like come up with their own production, and to actually create it and choreograph it and costume it and, map it out beginning, middle, and end, and to perform it and to be able to do that in this quick format way. And so they find it really super liberating. And plus add to that, they don't have to, it doesn't have to necessarily follow a formula, right? That they find it really oftentimes exciting and in line with more with performance art than what we think of normally when we think of, like traditional burlesque. And so they all come to it with different experience, but I have noticed it changing from they had no idea what it is to they might have a misperception of what it is because maybe they went to a shitty bar with a shitty free show and saw some crappy performance and think that's what it is. So
have you had students, take your course and then pursue burlesque, like start taking classes with you and then take it to the stage and just get bit by the bug?
Oh yeah, quite a few. And it's really, really, really exciting to see. And, sometimes they reach out to me like a decade later, 15 years later, and they're like, remember me? And I'm like, yes. So it's cool. Awesome. And I've even had students at NYU that I brought back a couple years later and had them be, guest teachers and present. And that's really inspiring. Not only for the student who gets to speak in the class, but also for the students who are watching, who are in the class. They're like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is a thing, right?
It makes it really 3D, I think.
Yeah. And doable and real as opposed to this like abstract thing.
So have you ever put any of your students in any of your shows?
Of course.
And so when you do your shows, you're talking about the students often thinking about it as like performance art. Like when you do this Realist Burlesque, you did that at Coney Island, right? Several times. That was a big one.
Yeah, I did that for 8 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you do multiple nights sometimes?
Yeah. So after the first couple of years, it would sell out. So we started to do 2 nights where we would do either the same production. No, I think we always did the same production both nights. And so, because I would do these like large scale, extravagant shows that would have multiple performances happening in different spaces. And so you would like walk through and experience these things. And they always had some type of philosophical or conceptual bent to them. It's Brooklyn Paper called it Socrates meets striptease, right? So they weren't like overly heady. It's not like you had to like, I don't think they were. It's not like you needed a dictionary to go see the shows. But they were pretty fun, but and these like large scale spectaculars, but it's a lot of work coordinating that type of movement
can't
through
imagine.
space. Yeah, but it was fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know it was a production because Dr. Lucky is the only person who brought an actual rhinestone toilet to BB King's one year. For your act, do you remember? So, I mean, okay, it's one thing to transport a toilet. It's another thing to rhinestone a toilet. And it's an entirely another thing to load a toilet into BB King's in Times Square.
And I got lost inside the bowels of BB King's, and I had to take my shoes off because my feet were hurt. And I was like walking around the basement getting hepatitis C, and I had no idea where I was. It was crazy, but I found my toilet and rolled it onto the streets of 42nd Street, and lots of people were taking photo ops. I thought that number was fucking hilarious.
I loved that number. I loved that.
With all the toilet paper flying at the end.
Yes. Oh my God. It was so, I love prop usage because I know how hard it is, especially in New York. It's kind of like the biggest pain in the ass that you could possibly have. And you came in with a toilet and it just made me love you even more.
Thanks.
Where is that toilet now?
It's in Beacon right now. I got to figure out what to do with the toilet.
Oh my God. Well, if anybody wants a toilet. So do you adjust your shows now in Albuquerque? Do you is it surrealist? Does it have that element? Do you take it down? Do you kind of adapt it to your audience a bit? Or are you just full steam Dr. Lucky in your face?
Pretty full steam Dr. Lucky in your face. You know, it's the talent I'm able to book. So the good thing is I have a little bit of a budget to bring a headliner in. So we have been, and luckily they all happen to be friends of mine. So, you know, I've had some incredible performers that have come and headlined and done the show. So Marinka came out. I had her as a headliner. Kitten DeVille, I've had her out. And so the local audience is able to see really incredible performers. And we have some really good local performers too. And then I always book variety. And so I usually only have 2 burlesque performers. I have a headliner and maybe 1 or 2 other burlesque acts, but there's a great belly dance troupe in New Mexico that I use a lot and use one of the performers. Also individually, I book them and just make sure that there's variety. And I always have drag. There's a very strong drag troupe and a pretty good drag community in New Mexico. So
cool.
Yeah, the shows are definitely variety based. And I feel like that kind of taps into that old time spirit when you would go to a show and it would have, singers and comedians and dancers and tap dancers and
that's my favorite.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about it is you can put anything on that stage and make it. Well, I'm also booking myself for your show once the world reopens because, I've had a long life fascination with New Mexico.
I know.
I literally I want to come. I subscribed to New Mexico magazine when I was 12 years old. Is that the most uncool thing? And I was everybody's reading Sassy. I had New Mexico magazine. I was look at that cactus.
That's hilarious.
I know, it's so weird. I think it's this past life thing. I like to think I was a badass cowgirl in my past life, but
probably were.
I hope so. All right, so Lucky, worldly experience, book experience, super smarty pants, performer, producer, teacher. You even did camp where you had people come to your house and taught them there. You're an endless teacher. If there is one encapsulated message of what burlesque was, is, and could be, what is it? What is the one drive home, Hail Mary, touchdown message of this niche little lowbrow art form?
Burlesque is poking fun. And it is, like I said before, it's making fun. And that's making fun of something and also making something fun to watch and fun to do. So, you know what? If you're bored, the audience is bored. If you are sick of doing an act, then the audience is sick of doing it. If you don't follow your heart and do something that makes you laugh or, just makes you have a reaction, it's oh my God, this is so dumb. A giant toilet. I just thought it just gave me so much joy. If it doesn't give you joy, it's not going to give anyone else joy. And it's probably not necessarily worth your time. Because we all know you're probably not going to make a pile of dough. And so if you're not having fun, and getting something out of it, then you should go back to what brings you joy and what makes you happy. And I think that, when we take ourselves too seriously, it kind of belies the very purpose and essence of burlesque, which is fun, making fun.
I think that was very well said, and I agree with you completely. It's like you can't take it too seriously. So, what is next for Dr. Lucky when the world is open again, when you can get back out there? I know you're writing a bunch, what's next? What's in the foreseeable?
I actually have no idea. I produce a burlesque show in New Mexico called Dr. Lucky's Blue Review. I just started a cabaret series called First Friday Cabaret, and that's in Albuquerque at the Hotel Andaluz. I had all these incredible performers coming in. I just have no idea what's going to happen. So I think that stressing about when we can get back on a stage and booking shows in the future, it's like I don't. I'm not really putting a lot of energy into that because who knows what's going to happen and who knows what's going to happen to these venues. I mean, I'm praying that everybody survives, but I don't think a lot of places will. And so, I had some shows booked here in TRC. I had some shows booked over in Arizona, and I'm just going to wait and see what happens. So for now, I've decided, the one thing I can do is write. So I've been writing a lot, and I'm going to just keep doing that into the foreseeable future. I'm teaching my NYU class, but long term, I literally have zero plans long term.
It's hard to make any, and that's kind of the same place that we're at over here. It's like, the beginning of this quarantine, we were speculating and okay, we're going to do this, and then it's like every day you just realize your speculation is purely a waste of time, and it's just emotionally draining to kind of go up and down again. So
yeah,
I'm with you. So if you could recommend, if people wanted to learn a little bit more about the history of burlesque, what do you think would be a good book besides yours that's going to come out soon, and then we'll all know? But what would you recommend to be like, a good book to give you a little bit of the history?
I think the best book written on burlesque it's an old one, but it's Robert Allen's Horrible Prettiness. It was published in 1991, and it's all about Lydia Thompson and the British Blonde era of burlesque. So it's historically before the striptease era, but his book is really the definitive source, and so I would start from there, but the exciting thing that's happening is that there are a lot of doctoral students who have either finished their dissertations or are working on their dissertations and are, they're going to be publishing on burlesque and neo-burlesque and nerdlesque and all these things. So I actually think that the field is going to grow, because when I started teaching, there was literally nothing written on neo-burlesque. I wrote one of the first and published one of the first articles in a peer-reviewed journal. And, since then, there has been more, but not like tons and tons. Like, there's a lot of work now in drag, on drag, and less so than burlesque. So I'm really excited about the future because I see all these new scholars coming out, and I'm like, oh, what are they going to write about? What are they going to create?
No, that's so exciting. I mean, you had to teach yourself, like mostly, right? Like, I mean, you just had to do endless amounts of research because a lot of it wasn't really there. So that's very exciting to think that, this group of scholars has been inspired to take this on and chronicle it and get it in the history books where it belongs.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. So keep your eyeballs. That answer will hopefully change in a couple of years.
And I'm excited too, because I have Horrible Prettiness on my nightstand, and I actually go in there and reference it quite a bit when I can't sleep. I'm like, oh, let me read this again and this again. So I'm glad that that's one that you endorse. Dr. Lucky, thank you so much. And if people want to find you on the Instagram, where would they go?
My Instagram is wanderluck.live, or you can visit me at drofburlesque.com. And of course, I'm on, the FAFSA book and all those things. Or if you just want to be old school and email me, you can do that too. drluckyphd@gmail.com. That's DRLUCKY PhD. That's also my Twitter handle. So come check me out, KIT, and follow me on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucky. And thank you for all the work that you do to chronicle all the time that we've all spent of our lives dancing on these stages, doing this thing.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in and listening today. I hope you learned something. My brain hurts so good right now, and I know I got a lot of reading and research to do, and I cannot wait to get Dr. Lucky's books in my hands and read that as well. Until next time, stay well and keep up with me on Instagram at Angie Pontani. Shimmy shaking out of here.
This has been a Giant Panda King production. You can find us at giantpandaking.com and on Instagram at giantpandaking.